Rams general manager Les Sneed made some very interesting comments that could tip off what the Rams are going to do in the NFL draft. And could the Rams draft a quarterback, or could they even get Arch Manning next year? I'm going to tell you how. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, subscribe to the fastest growing Rams YouTube channel, getting close to 17,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, and drop comments down below. Any questions you have for this week's mailbag, feature them down below so we can answer them on an upcoming episode. My name is Doug McCain. Friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. I also do NFL radio for Westwood One. Today I'm flying solo. The People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, will be back tomorrow. Today a jam-packed show. We're talking a lot about the quarterback position. Could the Rams draft a quarterback in the draft? Rams general manager Les Sneed had some interesting comments that he made at the owners' meetings. We'll talk about those and if they kind of tip off or indicate anything as to what the Rams might do in this draft and possibly the next draft. So we'll get into those, and let's dive right into it. There's always something going on in Rams land, and I want to start at the quarterback position. The quarterback position is interesting for the Rams because you just essentially renewed your vows, if you want to call it that. Did you go through marriage counseling and you realize that you're better off with each other? That's essentially what the Rams went through this offseason. Matthew Stafford was never going to come back on a deal where he didn't have a lot of guaranteed money, and they find a way to restructure that deal, and now it's going to be year to year with the Rams and Matthew Stafford. Now, the Rams are legitimate Super Bowl contenders now with Matthew Stafford back in the fold, the addition of Devontae Adams. They're still going to make moves in free agency. You still have a draft coming up, but right now you have a young emerging defense and Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, lots of talented players that could certainly move the needle for this team, push them over the top. But even if they have a great year, even if they win a Super Bowl, you just never know about the future Matthew Stafford with the kind of contract that he is on. So it's going to be year to year, and the Rams at some point are going to have to make a move, draft a quarterback, make a trade, and find a way to have life after Matthew Stafford. Even if he goes another 2 years, 3 years, at some point he won't be the quarterback for the Rams anymore. And the Rams can be very proactive from that standpoint. You could draft a quarterback, you could trade for a guy, you could look at free agency. But the truth is, haven't had a lot of great free agent quarterbacks in the last couple of seasons. That's just not kind of how it is, right? I mean, when you look at free agency, you don't see a lot of elite talent, especially guys that can move. I mean, look at the free agents in the last 4 or 5 years. Who are they? Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tyrod Taylor, Jacoby Brissett, Sam Darnold multiple times, Mitch Trubisky multiple times, 3 times now, Jameis Winston 3 times, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Do any of those names scream future Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Rams? Absolutely not. Those are the kind of names you get. Those kind of mid-tier, yeah, they can win you a football game, but certainly don't scream Lombardi Trophy winning quarterbacks. So what's the way to get a quarterback? Well, the Rams, they swung a trade for Matthew Stafford. They also traded up significantly to get Jared Goff in 2016, but you could also draft one in this draft, or you could draft one in the next draft and have him sit behind Matthew Stafford, a la a Jordan Love behind an Aaron Rodgers, and just have him learn the system, learn the culture, and then when it's time to call his name, he will be ready for that opportunity. So the Rams have a couple questions. Do you draft a quarterback in this draft? Either with your first pick, if someone falls to you, as Shedeur Sanders, I think it's unlikely. There is some mocks out there that think it's possible that Shedeur Sanders falls late, but if you get Jador with your number 26 pick, I think that would be something that you would want. Or you could get a Jaxson Dart. Well, Les Sneed did talk to reporters at the NFL general managers annual NFL owners meetings, and Les Sneed, he did not slam the door shut on the idea of getting a quarterback. It was pretty vague, but here's what he had to say when he was asked if the Rams would be interested in drafting a quarterback. He said, quote, "I'm always open to drafting a quarterback. Usually another team who gets into that more serious level usually drafts that player earlier than we would. If a team really thinks that player is their next QB, it's not like they're going, hey, let's wait till the middle of the second round. Let's do it now. If the right guy fell to number 26, and maybe he's the right guy for another team, they might want to move into the first round and draft that guy. So maybe that is better for the Rams than picking that right guy." That's how to honestly answer that question. And then to be honest about the dishonesty, if we were really looking at QB at number 26, we would probably say an answer like that. So interesting comments there. It's Les Sneed, and if you're fluent in Les Sneed and Sneed-isms, he kind of leaves it open-ending. And yes, if the right player fell to them, if the right quarterback fell to the Rams at 26, well, who would that right player be? Shedeur Sanders is certainly named. Cam Ward is not going to be there at 26 under any circumstances. But Jaxson Dart is someone that could fall to 26. But if you really felt like he was that guy, well, the Rams could take him. They could trade up for him if they thought there was another team was going to draft him a few slots higher. But look, let's look at Jaxson Dart for a second. And let's focus on just how he fared in college. What did his college performance, what do his college stats, his surface level stuff, his advanced stuff say about how good of a starting quarterback that he is? Well, who are the top guys in this draft? Well, it's widely considered to be Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Ward's going to be off the board. Sanders, I still think, is going to be one of the top picks. I still think that's where it will be at the end of the day. But if you look at where Jaxson Dart is and how his numbers compare, and the advanced stuff that kind of matters, his 11.9 average depth of target, his 7.1% big-time throw rate, his 10.7 yards per attempt, all those were higher than both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And you also consider that of all those three quarterbacks, which of them had the least amount of time to throw? You might think it's Shedeur Sanders because of the offensive line in Colorado. No, it was Jaxson Dart with 2.77 seconds in Mississippi with Ole Miss playing under Lane Kiffin. So he makes just watching his stuff and watching him flip his hips and just get that way to mix up coverages and go through all his progressions. It's really, really impressive. I mean, watching him play, flipping his hips, just pins down that flat defender down so he can throw to the slot corner over the top. I mean, he does a lot of really advanced stuff. He's got that combination of athleticism, and I think he's got the mental makeup to make plays in the pocket. And you look at some of his other stuff, 2024, 4,279 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 495 rushing yards. That's impressive. For his career, he's thrown for almost 12,000 yards, 11,970 yards, 81 touchdowns, 14 rushing touchdowns. His rush for 1,541 yards. So he can run, he can throw. His accuracy, 77.7% completion percentage. His deep threat, 12.4 air yards per attempt. Dual threat, he can get that on the ground. Saw him in the Gator Bowl throw 4 touchdowns, 404 yards. I think, too, he's a young veteran. He's 21, but's made 41 starts. I mean, that's impressive right there. That certainly is impressive right there. So I look at a Jaxson Dart, and I look at the athleticism, the ability to throw, and the fact that Les Sneed has mentioned that if you have a running quarterback is what he called a cheat code. He said it was a cheat code, but how are you going to get a running quarterback? Well, you're not going to find a really good running quarterback in the draft. That's just not how it happens at this part unless they fall to you. And then you look at free agency. All those guys are locked up. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, even the guys with some mobility, right? The guys that can move the pocket, Mahomes and Jaden Daniels, TJ Stroud, Michael Penix Jr., Jalen Hurts, Bo Nix, right? These guys are drafted. So, I mean, Brock Purdy can move, Caleb Williams can move, Drake May can move a little bit. There's just not a lot of teams that can really find guys that can move in free agency. It's just not kind of how it works. So, Jaxson Dart has some mobility. His underlying stats are really impressive. It's just a matter of, do you want to take a guy that can help you win this year? Or do you want to give Matthew Stafford another weapon? Let's say there is another piece out there like a Colson Loveland. The Rams are going to meet with Tyler Warren at some point. So I do think there's interest in bringing in another tight end with where Higbee's at in his career, with the fact that Colby Parkinson hadn't worked out of the position. So there are things to consider. I don't think the Rams would necessarily be jumping for joy for Jaxson Dart at 26 based on how all in they are in 2025. But I do think it would not be the worst idea. I don't, but I also think that the Rams are an organization that goes big. Big names, big moves, and there is going to be a name in the 2026 class that looks like he could be a future MVP and one of the faces of football for the next decade plus. How could the Rams get him? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I have my eyes on a few underdogs this year for the tournament, but all the top teams win. You had the top 1 seeds all winning. It's the first time you have 4 1 seeds in the Final Four since 2008, since my UCLA Bruins were in there with Russell Westbrook. But with FanDuel, it makes it easy to get back with the spreads, with the totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's almost something exciting to bet on every single day. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, like I said, available over on YouTube, but I definitely want to give a shout out to those everyday listeners out there. Whenever we drop an episode, whenever we drop a video, you guys are watching, you're liking, you're commenting, you're subscribing, so we appreciate that. And now is the time to join the Everyday Listeners Club. We're going to have some players on this offseason. We are going to do a lot of draft stuff, mock drafts, anything draft related. You're going to find it right here. And your Rams are one of the talks of football, right? They're a team that is in that handful of teams that is being considered to be Super Bowl champions next season. So the Rams are as relevant as ever. It's a perfect time to join that Everyday Listeners Club, and that way you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Okay, here in our second segment, we're going to talk about a quarterback that is essentially a lock to go top 5 in 2026, could go number 1. That is Texas quarterback Arch Manning. Now, the Rams general manager Les Sneed, he was in Austin at the Longhorns Pro Day, and there's pictures of him talking to Arch Manning, and clearly Les was there because his wife's son is a member of the team, but also he was there to look at other players for this year's draft, Isaiah Bond, guys like that the Rams could be considering. But he was talking to Arch Manning, and the thing about Arch Manning is he's got incredible arm talent for that age, can throw a deep ball, can make basically all the throws, but it's the mobility that I think is something that's very intriguing for the Rams. Like I said in the first segment, a couple months ago when Les Sneed was on the Rams show Between the Horns, he said that it's almost like a cheat code to have a mobile quarterback. So I do think that having a mobile quarterback is something that has been top of mind for the Rams as far as player acquisition and getting that guy potentially. And Arch Manning could be that guy for the Rams. Only problem is they are a team that's contending in 2026. They, at worst, are probably going to have the number 20 pick. At best, you could see him with the 32nd pick, right? You could see this team picking late. But as Les Sneed said, to reporters at the general manager's meeting, hey, if you want your quarterback, you're going to do anything to get him, right? You're going to do anything that you can possibly do to get him. If that means trading up and giving up future assets, you're going to do that. If that means going out there and taking a major, major risk, you're going to do that. And fortunately, if you're a Rams fan that wants to see this, well, you have the general manager that has a history of doing this. The Atlanta Falcons, they trade up for Julio Jones. The Rams in 2016, you trade up for Jared Goff. In 2016, they gave the 15th overall pick to the Titans, 2016 second-round picks, a third-round pick in 2016, a 2017 first-round pick, and a 2017 third-round pick. So that was a massive haul. And then you look at some of these other similar moves that you could use as comps. Well, there is the Robert Griffin III deal that the now Commanders swung at the time in 2012 with the Rams. At the time, they were the St. Louis Rams, and that was a major haul. The Rams got the 6th overall pick, a 2012 second rounder, a 2013 first rounder, a 2014 first rounder. So that was definitely a big swing by a Commanders organization that was looking at a Heisman Trophy winner, electric player, someone that they thought could change their franchise. Arch Manning, the talent that he has, the name that he has, let's not discount that. Having a Manning in Los Angeles, remember, Eli didn't want to play in San Diego, wanted to play in New York, major market, good infrastructure, nice ownership. The Mannings, they know what they're doing as far as which teams are going to go to, and I can't think of a quarterback that wouldn't want to play for the Los Angeles Rams. Great facilities, great stadium, great head coach, great ownership. I mean, top to bottom, the Rams are as buttoned up as it gets, and the proof is in the winning. The proof is in the Lombardi Trophy, so there's no way that Arch Manning wouldn't want to be a Los Angeles Ram. But it would cost a pretty penny, based on where the Rams would be in the draft, based on what his possible cost would be depending on which quarterbacks were available, which teams were looking at draft quarterbacks. But Arch Manning is a guy that you would be willing to give multiple future first-round picks for if he lives up to the hype and puts together the kind of year that we think he's going to put together in 2025. Now, what would it cost? You would definitely give up your 2026 first-round pick, which would be in the 20s, early 30s, a 2026 second-round pick, so you would get a second-round pick, 2027 first-round pick, 2027 second-round pick. So you begin up your first two picks the following draft, and then a 2028 first-round pick and a 2028 fourth or fifth-round pick. So you're basically looking at, you get the first-round pick in 2026, but you give up your first-round picks for the next couple of years, and then your second-round picks for the next couple of years, and then a fourth-round pick or a fifth-round pick. I mean, that's the kind of package it probably would take to get Arch Manning to be with the Rams. And the thing about that is, well, you say to yourself, well, how can you get away with drafting guys in the later, how can you get away with giving up all those future assets? Well, you can get away with it when you've made third-round picks that have performed like first-round picks. Guys like Kobe Turner. You've used fifth-round picks for guys that have played like top 10 picks in Puka Nacua. So the point is that the Rams have drafted so well, and they have already hit on so many positions of need that you put yourself in a position where you don't need tons of pieces to this puzzle, right? The better that they draft in the later rounds, the more opportunities they give themselves to use that capital and those assets to trade up for someone like an Arch Manning. I think it would make a ton of sense because finding a quarterback is one of the hardest things you can do, right? Finding a quarterback is like the ultimate determination of what you're, the ultimate determining factor of how your franchise is going to go, the direction that they are heading in. So I look, it doesn't happen often, but when you hit on a QB, you can get yourself 10 to 15 to 20 years of stability and contention. So I certainly would consider it, especially if they hit again in this year's draft. If you look at the defense side of the football, you have Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, Byron Young. If you find that cornerback and then you find a way to solidify that offensive line, you've got your pieces, right? You've got your pieces, and at some point, it's about the future. So if you're asking me, would I trade multiple future first-round picks for an Arch Manning? I 100% would, because you just don't find quarterbacks that often. They're worth the big swings. It's difficult to find them in free agency. It's very difficult to acquire them via trade. The Rams definitely were able to pull it off, but that's not the norm. That's more of the exception, not the rule. So, look, to find your quarterbacks, it's hard, not easy. It's something that you need to prioritize, because that's what this league's all about, is find those QB1s that can have success with. And I also, too, I like the star power. I like the idea of having a Manning in Los Angeles. He's mobile. He's got a great arm, got a great attitude. I think he's a future superstar in this league, and I would love to see him on the Los Angeles Rams. I do think that the big takeaway for this episode for you really should be that just because you have a great quarterback in Matthew Stafford does not mean you shouldn't think about what the future holds at that position. You have to be proactive at that position, because if you wait and all of a sudden you don't have your quarterback drafted, you're desperate in free agency, none of these free agent quarterbacks, I don't think are ever going to be Rams. Like the Darnolds of the world. No. The Rams are too good of a franchise to have to wait to free agency, because these other guys are getting locked up, right? So find your quarterback in the draft, develop him, get him the Rams culture, and then have him win some Super Bowls. But having a Manning on the Rams would be absolutely awesome. But coming up next, Les Sneed talked about the center position and who will be starting at that position in 2025. And I'll tell you why the Rams ultimately made an investment there. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, here in our third segment, we're going to talk about a recently brought back, re-signed Rams player, Coleman Shelton, because there was a lot of talk about why the Rams signed him to a 2-year, $12 million deal, including $6 million guarantee, which is starter level Monday. Well, today, Les Sneed talked about the signing. He did say that he was going to take over at the center spot. So last year he had Bo Limmer, a 6th-round pick, who stepped up in a big way after the Rams moved off of Jonah Jackson, a free agency signing that really turned out to be a bust for them, for being quite frank about it. Well, Bo Limmer stepped up, and he did in a big way. They needed it. He was serviceable. He made some really nice plays at times. He held down the position. But let's not forget why this season ended for the Rams. Why did it end? The Rams are mounting a comeback. They were in Eagles territory. They're 14 yards away from hosting an NFC championship game at home. And what happened? Well, Jalen Carter, he had a free run at Matthew Stafford. He blew it up, and he caused the sack. What happens on the next play? Blows it up, and then he forces the errant throw. So that is something that I think stuck in the minds of Les Sneed and the Rams. And they say, you know what? We can't have our season come down to a 6th-round center, right? We need to prioritize the offensive line and give Matthew Stafford all the opportunities to go out there and make plays. Well, Les Sneed said, what we missed with Coleman when he left was that ability to communicate to all of our young offensive linemen and maybe even our veterans. Hey, maybe in an audible situation, maybe when things change, and being able to handle that in the moment, it was very vital. Bo Limmer did an unbelievable job evolving into becoming the starting center, but I've often said he was a freshman and working amongst a bunch of PhDs. So there was an element there where you missed. Not necessarily in what he's doing, but in what the center does for the other people. So, yeah, it's hard enough being a rookie in this league, trying to make it on a Rams team, on a team that's going out there and pursuing a Super Bowl title. But it's another thing to communicate that to your guards and your tackles, and pointing out different actions and blitzes, and pointing out situations where, okay, this could change the complexity the calculus of a certain play. And Bo Limmers, he's trying to figure things out. He's trying to communicate to himself the right plays to make. So to expect him to see things and identify things beyond what his own priorities are to his teammates as a rookie, that is something that was probably a little unrealistic for him to be doing. So the Rams said to themselves, let's bring in a veteran, let's bring in a Coleman Shelton back that is someone that we trust in those situations. So look, I mean, there was a miscommunication when Carter did sack Matthew Stafford right away. And if he doesn't, Tyler Higbee, he was open across the middle. It was 3rd and 2. They're at the Eagles' 13-yard line, 14-yard line. You'd have gone there and made that play. Maybe he's in the end zone. At the very least, you're down to 5. So communication is key. So I love the fact that the Rams made a kind of a sneaky move to solidify that. And you're going to see Coleman Shelton taking over that position. And then I think for Bo Limmer, this is not some type of demotion. This is, hey, you can play center, but we'll also develop you at the guard spots. We'll also develop you in ways to where you can help this team. And if they do suffer another injury, if they do need him in another role, he'll be ready to play that. But the Rams are loading up on veterans at certain positions, and I think that this was a no-brainer type of move because, look, Bo Limmer is an overachiever, right? He's not someone that you can go out there and just demand that he be this great center at this spot. That's just not how it works. So I do love the fact that they gave him that opportunity to say, you know what, we're not going to expect you to be something you're not, and even if down the line you do grow into this role, we're not going to force it on you in year 2. So credit to him for taking advantage and making the most of it in year 1. But in year 2, I think it's about developing, and I'm excited to see what Coleman Shelton can do because he has had a lot of success playing that position on a sneaky level. So I really, really think that this is a great example that, yes, they go out there and you bring in Devontae Adams, but you don't lose sight of the small little details that help you win football games, that you're not just focused on the sexy positions, the receivers, the running backs, things like that. You also show a lot of attention to detail when you go back and watch games and you say, what is the exact reason why we lost? And it doesn't come down to one play, but putting a rookie in a situation where you have to be expected to communicate on a high level and point things out and not having that guy in place, this is why this team had like the shortest little window of not contending, and all of a sudden they're right back to contending, and they're looking like a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So Coleman Shelton will be your starting center to start things off. Bo Limmer, he'll go back into development mode, and the Rams are going to try to stockpile depth at that position. So I love what I'm hearing from Les, and excited to see what this team does this offseason, as they've already had a great offseason, but now draft season is upon us. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel over on YouTube. If you're watching on the podcast, write us a review, and we'll read it on the show. And same thing with the YouTube comments. Go over there and comment down below, and we're going to read those on the show as well. But my name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.